WrestleMania 1. For Madison Square Garden, it was pure 80s spectacle, star power, chaos, and larger-than-life moments. The match that defined the night was the main event. Hulk Hogan and Mr. T taking on Rowdy Roddy Piper and Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. It wasn't about five-star wrestling. It was about star power. Hogan was already the face of the company, but teaming him with Mr. T, TV's toughest guy, turned this into a pop culture moment. Piper was the perfect heel, a master trash talker who built weeks of tension leading up to the show. Orndorff was the muscle, cold, and intense. Chaos ruled the ring. Muhammad Ali served as special guest enforcer, while Jimmy Snuka backed Hogan from the corner. The match was total mayhem, brawls, interference, people on the apron. At one wild moment, Ali even punched Piper because, well, even legends can't resist wrestling chaos. Hogan nailed the hero in peril role perfectly, but the real turning point came when Cowboy Bob Orton, Piper's enforcer, tried to interfere, but accidentally slammed Orndorff with his loaded forearm cast. That mistake opened the door. Hogan capitalized, got the pin on Orndorff, and the roof nearly blew off the Garden. This wasn't just a win in the ring, it was a win for the WWF's future. That one match launched WrestleMania into the stratosphere.
WrestleMania 2. 3 cities, one match worth remembering. WrestleMania 2 was ambitious. Maybe a little too ambitious. 3 cities, 3 separate venues, New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, all trying to host one massive event. The concept was bold, but the execution, let's just say it kept everyone on their toes. Still, one match managed to stand out and steal the whole show. The British Bulldogs versus the Dream Team for the WWF Tag Team Championships. You've got the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid, 2 absolute machines in the ring. Then you've got the Dream Team, Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. Cocky, methodical, and not afraid to bend the rules. What followed was a tag team masterclass with hard-hitting action, innovative spots, and a crowd that actually woke up after a sluggish undercard. The climax came when Smith pushed Valentine into the corner and he knocked heads with the Dynamite Kid. In the confusion, Davey Boy rolled up Valentine for the win, with celebrity manager Ozzy Osbourne and Captain Lou Albano cheering them on from ringside. Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy's steel cage match in the main event gets an honorable mention here due to its iconic status, although it was mostly Hogan doing Hogan things. For pure wrestling, the tag title bout was untouchable. WrestleMania 3. 93,173 fans. One match that changed wrestling forever. Everyone remembers WrestleMania 3 for that body slam. Hulk Hogan hoisting Andre the Giant like a forklift straining under a mountain of steel. But let's be real. The match that truly stole the show was undoubtedly Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Macho Man Randy Savage for the Intercontinental Championship. While Hogan and Andre gave us the spectacle, Steamboat and Savage gave us perfection. The pacing, the reversals, the timing, it was like they rehearsed it frame by frame. In fact, Savage did map out every single move on a notepad. What we got here was 14 minutes and 35 seconds of pure edge-of-your-seat magic. Savage was the vicious champ, cocky and calculating. Steamboat was the fiery underdog, still nursing a storyline throat injury from a brutal ring bell attack months earlier. The crowd was split. Some wanted the madness, others wanted the dragon to rise. The final sequence, chaos erupts. Savage goes for the ring bell again, but George the Animal Steel pushes him off the top rope. Steamboat rolls up Savage in a flash pin so quick you barely saw it coming. Hogan versus Andre had the crowd, the slam, the mythos, but Steamboat versus Savage made history between the ropes. But here's the question. Did Savage versus Steamboat really outshine Hogan versus Andre? Some fans still say the slam was the bigger moment. What do you think? Drop your pick in the comments. I'm curious where you land. WrestleMania 4. One tournament, one crowned king. WrestleMania 4 was a marathon. The WWF Championship was vacant, and the entire event was built around a 14-man single elimination tournament to crown a new champ. Lots of matches, some forgettable, but one rose above the clutter. Macho Man Randy Savage versus the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase in the tournament final. This match paid off an entire night of storytelling. Savage had already wrestled 3 times earlier on the card. Meanwhile, DiBiase had the luxury of a bye in the semifinals and the sneaky support of Andre the Giant in his corner. The odds totally stacked against Savage. However, the Macho Man generally comes out on top with those kinds of odds. Savage fought with the desperation of a man who'd carried the show on his back. DiBiase, always the opportunist, tried to end it quickly with underhanded tactics.
Andre interfered, choking Savage behind the ref's back. But then came the turning point as Hulk Hogan stormed down to even the odds, swinging momentum back in Savage's favor, and swinging a steel chair equalizer for good measure. Finally, Savage climbs to the top to deliver the big elbow drop, and the place erupts. Miss Elizabeth, Hogan, and Savage celebrate in the ring, and the Mega Powers were born. Nothing else came close to that tournament finale, not just for the match, but for what it set in motion. Sometimes it's not just about winning. It's about who you bring to the party.
WrestleMania 5. The Mega Powers collide in a soap opera showdown. WrestleMania 5 wasn't about titles. It wasn't about work rate. It was about jealousy, betrayal, and explosive emotion. Hulk Hogan versus Macho Man Randy Savage for the WWF Championship. Best match on the card, no question. This was a blow-off to one of the most emotionally charged storylines the WWF had ever done. A year earlier, Hogan and Savage stood united as the Mega Powers. But behind the scenes, well, actually on screen, but through side eyes and slow burns, things got messy. Savage got paranoid. He didn't like how Hogan kept getting a little too close to Miss Elizabeth. Hogan denied it, but the tension built week after week until Savage snapped, blasting Hogan backstage and ending their alliance in brutal fashion. The match was classic 80s WWF drama. Savage was fast and sharp, wearing Hogan down with elbow drops, knees, and cheap shots. Hogan sold like crazy. Then, right on cue, hulks up. The finger wag, the punches, the big boot, and then comes the leg drop. Hogan crowned new WWF champion again. Miss Elizabeth was at ringside in a neutral corner, torn between them. It added so much tension, like a breakup in front of 18,000 people. The story hit hard. A shout-out has to go to the Brainbusters versus Strikeforce, a real tag team clinic, great in-ring storytelling, and a shock heel turn by Rick Martel of Strikeforce. But the night really belonged to the demise of the Mega Powers.
WrestleMania 6, The Ultimate Challenge delivers. Toronto's Skydome was buzzing in April 1990, hosting the biggest wrestling event Canada had ever seen. For the first time ever, WrestleMania's main event was babyface versus babyface, champion versus champion, icon versus icon, The Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan, Intercontinental Champ versus WWF Champ was the match. And not just the best match on the card, it was the card. A wrestling clinic, it was not. It was a clash of titans, built purely on aura, charisma, and raw crowd energy. Hogan was the veteran king, Warrior, the unpredictable, rising god. The build was simple. Who's the real face of the WWF? Bell rings, they lock up, and the crowd goes insane. Every single move, shoulder tackles, tests of strength, stare downs, got thunderous reactions. This match had psychology. Warrior played mind games. Hogan sold like the future of WWF depended on it, and both looked exhausted by the end, like they'd just gone 12 rounds with Vince's booking committee. The match came to a close when Warrior hit the big splash after Hogan missed his signature leg drop. 1, 2, 3. Clean pin, and the first on Hogan in around 9 years. Hogan hands him the WWF Championship in a rare show of respect, a passing of the torch, even if it was the kind of torch Hogan usually liked to snatch back later. Nothing else on the card came close. Jake Roberts versus Ted DiBiase was solid. But this was the night Warrior was launched into the stratosphere, face paint, tassels, and all. WrestleMania 7, a retirement match that broke hearts. Forget the red, white, and blue theme. Forget Hogan versus Slaughter for the WWF title. The real match, the one that brought fans to their feet and tears to their eyes, was the Ultimate Warrior versus Macho King Randy Savage in a retirement match. This match was about finality. The loser had to leave the WWF. Savage was full heel at this point, rocking the crown, flanked by Queen Sherry, and drawing heat like only Randy could. The Warrior was still the painted powerhouse, unpredictable and intense. But here, both men told a deeper story than they ever had before. The pacing was methodical. Warrior didn't bulldoze, and Savage didn't run scared. Instead, they wrestled like two men truly fighting for their careers. Savage drops 5 flying elbows in a row, because if one elbow doesn't work, try 4 more. And Warrior still kicks out. Warrior, visibly shaken, looks to the heavens for answers mid-match, as if he's waiting for Vince to send down creative notes. In-ring storytelling at its best. With both wrestlers exhausted, Warrior nails a series of shoulder blocks, then simply places one foot on Savage's chest for the coldest pin of his career. Randy Savage retired. But then, the moment that stole the show,
As Sherry attacked Savage post-match, Miss Elizabeth, his former manager and real-life partner, ran down, threw Sherry out, and reunited with him in the ring. Savage lifts her up, and the crowd is in tears. Total emotional gut punch. The Hart Foundation versus the Nasty Boys, with the added precursor of Jimmy Hart's managerial switch, showcased technical prowess against brawling in-ring style. It ticked all the boxes, especially with a shock win for the Nasties. But we have to go with the emotional roller coaster of Warrior versus Savage.
WrestleMania 8. Flair bleeds, Savage steals the show. 2 advertised main events, Hogan versus Sid and Savage versus Flair. One ended in a DQ and a post-match Papa Shango run-in. The other, Randy Savage versus Ric Flair for the WWF Championship, was the one that actually delivered. Flair came in as champ, dressed in red, slicked in arrogance, and armed with a nasty rumor that he had a secret relationship with Miss Elizabeth. Savage was out for blood, the drama was high, the stakes were personal, and the crowd was locked in. From the start, this felt like a bar fight disguised as a title match. Savage was all fury, fast fists, high-risk moves, and pure emotion. Flair played the classic heel handbook to perfection, cheap shots, eye pokes, grabbing the ropes. And yes, he bled. A deep crimson mask halfway through, selling the war they were in. In the final act, both men standing center ring, Flair holding and working on his opponent's leg, Savage skillfully counters and rolls him up with a handful of tights for the pin. After the bell, Flair tries to kiss Elizabeth. Savage snaps, but receives a beatdown as wild as the match itself. Pure WrestleMania drama at its peak. WrestleMania 9. A star-making performance buried by a Hulk-sized swerve. WrestleMania 9 had the look, an outdoor Roman Coliseum set at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. It also had some of the worst creative decisions ever made on a Mania card. But even through all the madness, one match stood out. Bret Hitman Hart versus Yokozuna for the WWF Championship. Bret came in as champ, the technical wizard, the workhorse fans were finally rallying behind. Yokozuna was an absolute monster, weighing over 500 pounds and steamrolling his way through the roster. On paper, it was a mismatch, but in the ring, it was compelling. Hart knew he couldn't match Yoko's power, so he went after the legs, used leverage, and fought like the underdog he was. Then came the screw job. Bret somehow locks in the sharpshooter. The crowd explodes. Mr. Fuji throws salt in Bret's eyes. Yokozuna takes full advantage and pins for the title. Then Hogan happens. Unadvertised, unneeded, and fully hulked up, he storms the ring. Fuji foolishly challenges him on the spot. 20 seconds later, a leg drop, and just like that, Hulk Hogan is WWF champion. And Bret is looking like he accidentally walked onto someone else's set. Fans were stunned, and not in a good way. An honorable mention has to go to the Steiner brothers versus the Headshrinkers, a brutal encounter with both teams looking to make a statement on the biggest stage of all. Technical, brutal, and hard-hitting.
WrestleMania 10, 2 5-star matches in one night. Possibly one of the most underrated Manias of all time. And it's because it gave us not one, but 2 all-time classics. The match that truly stole the show, though, was Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon in the very first televised WWF ladder match for the undisputed Intercontinental Championship. The story goes that Michaels had been stripped of the title months earlier for failing to defend it in the stipulated time frame. Razor won the vacated belt. Michaels returned with his own version, and now both men claim to be the real champ. Basically, it was a mine's bigger than yours feud. So at Madison Square Garden, 2 belts hung high above the ring, and the only way to win was to climb the ladder and grab them. This was a high-risk performance. It was physical, brutal, and way ahead of its time. Razor brought the brawling, Michaels brought the aerial assaults, and the ladder itself became a third opponent. Michaels took insane bumps, getting catapulted into the ropes, splashing Razor off the ladder, while Razor kept grinding him down. After a grueling spectacle, Razor knocked Michaels off the ladder into the ropes, and as he's tangled up, climbs and unhooks the belts to become the undisputed champ. The Garden goes nuts, and anyone watching felt like they'd just survived a roller coaster without a seatbelt. The other classic that night belongs to Bret Hart versus Yokozuna for the WWF Championship in the main event. This being as much for the storyline and emotion involved as for the technical prowess versus raw power yet again. Both Lex Luger and Bret earned a shot at the title after winning the Royal Rumble. Luger lost his match by disqualification, and Hart went on to avenge his loss at WrestleMania 9, bringing the locker room out in celebration.
If you enjoyed this trip back to the very first WrestleManias, smash that like, it really helps the channel. Hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss part 2, where we dive into WrestleMania 11 through 20. Now tell me, did you catch any of these live or did you discover them later? Drop your memories or hot takes in the comments, I read them all. See you at the next breakdown.